Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I actually wanted to talk to you about the Netflix miniseries When They See Us. And for those of you who may not know, this series is based on the true story of the Central Park Five, the case that happened in 1989. And what the Central Park Five case is about, it was a case that happened in April 1989, and the trial took place in 1990, but in the case of the Central Park Five, it was 5 teenagers who were falsely convicted of a rape of a white female jogger in Central Park. Now, upon watching the movie about the Central Park Five, I did hear about it, but the case actually happened before I was born. So this case happened in the 80s, 1 year before the 90s started. It happened in the 80s, and I was born in the 90s. Now, upon watching this movie, I already had some information about the Central Park Five and what it was about, how they were 5 young males of color. 4 of them were African American and 1 was Latino. Since the case happened before I was born, I was only able to find out about it years later through, people talking on YouTube, and of course during the Trump election going on, that it was mentioned. And then I started doing a little bit more research on it. I started hearing about it. And now that when I heard that a miniseries was coming about it through Netflix, I said, okay, I really have to check this out. And I did see the movie. Now, granted, I saw all 4 parts broken up. So what I mean by that is I saw part 1 one day, and then a few days later I saw part 2 and 3, and then a few days later I saw part 4. And the reason I saw them not all together is because I did watch Lovely T's review on it, her hour-long live stream on it, and she put some spoilers in there, so I had to mentally prepare myself to watch it. The reason I chose to watch her video before was because I didn't want the off chance that she would delete it, so then I wouldn't get to see or hear what she had to say. So I decided to watch that first, because sometimes she kind of deletes her live streams because it's always iffy, but I decided to watch her video first and then watch the movie itself. And from what I'm seeing, what I saw about people saying about the movie online, giving spoilers, saying, oh my God, this was so riveting, heartbreaking, it broke people, people were emotional. And some of these people were not around during this time, but it really broke them. It really, was emotional. And all I have to say is that I agree. Especially part 2 and 3. It gave me an analysis of life outside of prison, which I'm going to get to later in this video. But upon seeing the first video, it's like the beginning. Part 1, basically, you saw 5 teenagers or 5 kids in Harlem who just went to go have fun, chill in the park. Some of them went crazy, but notice it was a big group of people. It wasn't just these 5 boys who were there by themselves. And I'm gonna get into this later, but but you saw how, some people weren't, they were just going crazy, making a lot of noise, just, the term that we use, wildin'. They were wildin', and of course they put that in the paper, wilding, because they didn't know how. They don't know our slang, okay? But, you see, they were in different parts of the park, but that jogger was in a whole nother side of the park. And then, next thing you know, they're looking for every single 16-year-old that was in that park. So fast forward to the time where they're looking for all these teenagers and 16-year-olds, they rounded up a whole lot of people. For those who don't know, they didn't just round up these 5 kids. They rounded up a whole lot of other people in a big group of people and asked, hey, what did you see? Who do you know? And they ended up selecting these 5, okay? And funny enough, little side note, Brett Gray from On My Block was in there. I was like, wait, I know this kid. I'm like, is that Brett Gray? I know you. How did On My Block get in here? I even went on his page. I was like, oh my gosh, I was shocked to see you. And When They See Us, oh my gosh, that's so good. But anyway, yes, so if you saw that, hopefully you did. If you didn't, I urge you to go see it. But they rounded up these 5 kids at the end of the day. And if you even see the original confession tapes online, you can definitely see that they were coerced. And in this movie, you can see that they were coerced because, guess what? For those of you who may say, oh, this is dramatized, the real Central Park 5, or the exonerated Central Park 5. The real exonerated Central Park 5 were on set with the actors, especially the child actors, and all of them are just so cute. Oh my gosh. The original child actors were there with them. So, of course, they were able to coach them. They were able to tell them what happened based off their memory. And what happened is you can see that they were coerced, and each dynamic of these interrogations kind of goes to show you a little something about how police, and I've taken forensic psychology, so coercion is a thing that happens. These kids, without any parental supervision, without any food, water, bathroom breaks, interrogated for so many hours, they were being told to just fess up, tell us what we want to hear, just say you did it, and we will let you go home. And all they were trying to do was trying to go home because they just did not like being interrogated. And I saw Kevin, the way Asante Black portrayed Kevin, he said, I just want to go home, man. I didn't see a lady. I didn't see anyone. And he was like basically crying. He was the one with the black eye, and he was basically crying. And he was 14 at the time. And he's just like, I want to go home. And of course, when you're a child and you're naive, 1, and 2, you don't know anything about like Miranda rights and within the law, and you can argue that even if we know the law inside and out, they still are going to do it like this. But in my opinion, although there is validity in that, that does not mean you shouldn't know your laws and your rights inside and out. Okay? Little side note, the Moors, if you see the Moors defend themselves on these YouTube videos, they're defending themselves by themselves, okay? They don't use lawyers because they know the law inside and out. So take some notes from the Moors. There are actually cases where black attorneys, or non-black attorneys, but black people, black men have, fought for themselves and defended themselves by themselves in court, and they won. So know the law inside and out, know how to use it, know how to argue it, because sometimes your delivery of how you say it in the courtroom can actually affect a jury's decision. And speaking of juries, black folks, don't skip jury duty. Okay, I'm telling you this, do not skip jury duty. You never know, because you always say we need more of us in the jury, we need more of us in there. Don't skip jury duty then. So anyway, and we saw in the interrogation and how they split them up, and they were basically saying, did you do this to this lady? Did you rip off her clothes? Did you touch her with Kevin and Raymond? And Yusuf is like, who's Raymond? Who's this? Who's that? And that's how you really know that none of these boys knew each other. They didn't know each other all together. And Yusuf and Corey were the only two, or the only people out of that 5 group, out of that 5 people that knew each other personally, okay? And then they got into the cell and said, hey, I lied on you, man. I lied on you. And they were like, yeah, I lied on you too. But they were coerced into doing it. They just want to get home, get out of here. And they had no idea that this would result in a trial, in a case, that false admission is going to be a problem. This is why you need to know the law inside and out. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later about, not lying about something isn't true. But it goes to show that the only 2 people that didn't know each other, the only 2 people that knew each other were Yusuf and Corey. They were friends. They were best friends, okay? They were cool. And what I found so heartbreaking was that Corey was not even on the list, and he was just going with Yusuf to be a good friend. And, that the cop said, hey, you want to go down with your buddy? Not knowing what he could have gotten himself into. But he went down just to be a good friend. And he ends up spending the most time in prison. And he went to a maximum security adult prison. Every one of the other Central Park Five ended up in juvie, and that's not bad, but it's actually better than maximum security prisons. I'm not saying bad stuff doesn't happen in juvie, but I'm pretty sure you're not living it a hard knock life like a maximum security prison, okay? And of course, I can't speak because I have never been to prison. I hopefully never have to go to prison for whatever reason. I can only imagine how tough it is in there based on documentaries, based on people's testimonies, and based on cases like this. But I think Corey's story was the most heartbreaking because, and funny enough, if you look at the video, he was basically acquitted off most of the charges, but was sentenced to the longest time in prison. And my thing is, how does that happen? I just want to figure out, how does that happen? I find it funny that this is what happens when you were just trying to be a good friend. And, now I understand why you have some people that, don't do stuff for their boys. Like you said, hey, I'm just doing this for my boy. And, we always talk about brotherhood and sisterhood, and we stick by each other. And trust me, I would be looking at this situation, I would be very conflicted if I was saying, hey, let me go down to the station, or let me go down in this predicament just to be a good friend to someone I was really cool with, because, they probably would have done that for me, or I would like to think so. But to see it end up in your worst tragedy, in a horrible tragedy, like you spending the most time in prison for something you didn't even commit. You weren't even on the list. And yet you spend the most time, and you were just trying to be a good friend. And it kind of alludes to or basically shows the fact of when people try to do good, it's like the worst things happen. And now I understand why people don't want to do anything good, and they just tend to be very individualist, just think for themselves. And what's funny enough, I really didn't like how Yusuf's mom was treating Corey's mom, because Corey's mom had an idea, played by Niecy Nash. I love Niecy. But Corey's mom came up with the idea, okay, how about Corey writes me a letter, I send it to you, you send it to Yusuf, and we just trade back in. It seems like a lot of work, but it actually sounded like a good idea for them to communicate. It was really a good idea, and Yusuf's mom was like, I'm not having it, I'm not this. Now, the thing about Yusuf's mom, Yusuf, his family was part of the Nation of Islam, and I think I think it was in a documentary about this, but it was really part of the reason why Yusuf was able to spend, I think he spent the least amount of time in prison, and they were able to get him out so fast. Like, they raised a lot of money just to help him get him out. And, this is one of the things I like about the Nation of Islam. Okay, I'm not a Muslim or anything. I'm not part of that group. But one thing I can say about the Nation of Islam is that they're a very organized, somewhat very conscious and educated and group, and they tend to focus on building, and you see they're really tight knit, so they're very organized, and I like that about them. I will give them props to them, okay? But what I don't like, is kind of cultish. You see some very extremist Nation of Islam members, you know what I'm saying? You see some very extremist people, which is why sometimes people tend to back away from the Nation of Islam sometimes. And, it tends to be like a cultish, oppressive group. But I respect their tight-knit, community-minded thing, because, other groups do it, so I respect them for that, and this is one of the reasons. But I feel like Corey's mom had a good point about passing the letters, and I was very disappointed in Yusuf's mom, because although, look, I get it, she's just trying to focus on her child. As a mother, I'm not a mother, but if I was, I'm only trying to focus on my child and my child alone. But the thing is, Corey went with Yusuf to be a good friend, and he's spending the most time in prison, and you couldn't really try to get him out. You couldn't even try to transfer him over to a juvie so he stays out of maximum security adult prison. I wasn't feeling that at all. I was just kind of disappointed. And this is kind of where the whole, we don't help each other out. We're in a predicament, and you're beefing. That, as someone pointed it out. And it's true. You're having arguments. The bigger picture is, we need to get these boys out of jail. We need to get these boys out of prison. We need to work on finding, something. And it's not that Yusuf, from what I've got from the movie, it's not that Yusuf didn't want his friend out. I think Yusuf would have tried to do whatever he could to try to get Corey out if he could. Okay? But his mom was not giving him any information on what has been going on with Corey. And I couldn't feel that. I was very disappointed at that because Corey really had nothing to do with this. None of them had anything to do with this situation. But, Corey wasn't even on the list. They weren't even looking for him. And he went to the police station just to be a good friend. And this is why, sometimes it's best to keep your circle small. And this is why I say maybe some people without friends are some of the best people. They're probably very quote unquote lucky. So in cases like this, because you try to be good and it backfired on you, and my heart broke for Corey. And speaking of which, the real Corey Wise, he's actually the only one of the Central Park Five who still resides in New York City, and that's funny because I live in New York City, and and lately he's been taking pictures of with people. They were giving him daps. They were seeing him. People been taking pictures with him. Yeah, that's just a little side note. But getting to the other people in the Central Park Five. Let's get to Antron. So Antron is at the station. He's being interrogated. His parents come in, and his father pretty much gives him very, very bad advice, basically telling him to go along with it, tell them what they want to hear, just do it so we can get out of here. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe, I'm going off of memory right now because I've watched this once, but basically he was telling them, just say what they want to hear, just tell them, just do it. And he was basically preaching a lot of stuff to his son. Like it would seem like wise words to his son at the time. And he basically does that, listen to his father, and Antron and his father had a falling out because Antron said, "You didn't even show up at my trial." And watching the father in this movie, I sort of understood. I guess he just could not see his son like that. And I know that will be very not personally, but I understand how that could be very heartbreaking for a parent, or, it could be very riveting or wrenching for a parent to just watch your child go through that. And the problem is when Antron finally gets out of prison, he didn't want to talk to his dad. He didn't want to have anything to do with his dad. And, he probably blames his dad for the reason why he is in prison. And to be honest, I really wanted them to go more in depth, a little bit more in depth with the other Central Park Five, like Yusuf and Kevin and Antron and Ray while they were in prison, because they went through an extensive, almost extensive detail, very extensive, shocking, riveting detail with Corey. That was all of part 4, okay? They were talking about Corey's life in prison because, yes, he did spend the most time, but I kind of did want to see how their time was in prison for the other 4. I know that, Kevin, his sister came and said, hey, she had a date, she turned it down and whatnot, and that was, kind of words from the outside world a little bit. But, we saw Raymond talked to his father and how his little brother was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he was spending time in juvie, and he was talking to his dad, and how we saw Antron just talking to his mom to say, hey, day by day I'm going to be waiting for you, and then you see Yusuf and his mom saying, hey, just study your Quran, just read in the library, just stay out of trouble, basically things like that. And then when it came to Antron coming back to the real world, what I really liked about part 3 was that it was a really good analysis of what life is like after prison, especially for young males and young males of color. We saw how Antron was really trying to get back on his feet, and he was trying to go, I believe he was trying to go back to school, or he was trying to go to school. He was on a date with this girl, and she was talking about, why can't you take me out to this place? Why can't you take me out to that place? And he's like, well, I can't spend any money. I don't have any money. I only make a certain amount at a certain place. I only make a certain amount, and I have to save that up for more important things. And if I was the girl, I would look at him sideways because, you know, as a woman, I want a man to have enough money to spend on me and him, okay? But then by watching this movie, I'm looking at it like, yeah, you only make so much, especially if you are lucky to have a job or start something outside of prison once you get out, because that's the biggest thing. Once you go to prison and you come out, if you come out, how do you start your life again? How do you start? Where do you start? Who's going to be hiring you if you need a job? And, you know, for part of a parole hearing, because I also watched Queen Sugar with like Ralph Angel, and he was struggling to get some work, because part of your parole is that you have to work a certain amount of hours, make a certain amount of money, or you basically have to find a job. And that's the thing, you know, who's willing to hire you outside of prison? It's tough to get a job. And I'm going to get into a little bit later with Ray. And, you know, Antron saying, yeah, I can't spend money. And the girl was kind of acting a certain way. Now, I understand as a woman. As a woman, I understand her thing. But by watching Antron's story, I understand it was so hard for him to please so many people. He was trying to please this girl. And also goes to, it also gives a great analysis of finding love after prison. You know, who's going to be willing to date someone who was convicted of a felony, whether they were guilty of it or did the crime or not? You know what I'm saying? So it also was a trope about how difficult it is to date after prison, you know, and especially at a certain age. So I feel like the guy who played Antron, they were really good. All the actors, just another side note, all the actors, the little kid actors, those babies, they were so good. And I'm telling you, the guy who played Kevin Richardson, grown up Kevin Richardson, his name was, I think, Jay or John Cunningham or Cunningham. Oh God, I forgot his name. Oh my gosh. I'll probably look that up later. I mean, I've been on his page, but I kind of just don't remember his full name. But, you know, it's his name was, I think it's Cunningham. Yeah, Cunningham. He looks so much like Kevin that I actually thought they got the real Kevin Richardson to be in this movie. I'm like, this guy looks so much like Kevin. Oh my gosh. But yes, so it also played a trope. You know, we saw Ray getting with his girlfriend again, and, you know, he was trying to find a spot. And, you know, his stepmother was, like, so bad to him. You know, the father was sticking up with the stepmother. And, and of course, you know, a man trying to please his woman. But I'm saying, that's your son. That's your son. Look, again, as a woman, I would like a man to take my side. But then again, by watching this movie as a person who's looking at it through a different lens, I'm saying this guy's been through a lot. He comes back and his household is full of kids. Like, I think the room he was in was taken up. He was taking down pictures like, this is not what I remember. And again, we saw those CDs. You saw how the technology was advanced. You were gone for so long that technology has advanced. When you came out, things are so different. I remember when his sister was driving, when Kevin's sister was driving him through Harlem, he's like, things sure have changed. Oh my gosh, it's so different. Oh my gosh. Things are, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, things have changed. Things really have changed. And it's so weird, like, you know, you don't get too connected to the outside world. You're not able to see the world change. And it's like you go in one person, or you go in one at one time, come out, and it's like, snap, everything's changed before you. You know, part of the reason, one of the things about, you know, being free, and when I look at my childhood around that time, I was able to see the transitions. And, you know, I was able to see the flow of how things started to change, you know, not just going the way things were at one point in my life and then come out and then snap of a finger, everything's changed. And that is what happened to these men. And I feel so heartbroken because, yeah, they were robbed of their innocence. They were tried as adults. That's another thing too, what this thing happened, this case did. The whole trying people as an adult. That's why people are very critical. That's why black people are very critical of Bill Clinton's crime bill, the whole trying as an adult. Look, a lot of crimes have dropped down. Let's just be honest. The only benefit of that bill to me was that in certain cases, crimes have dropped. Some people even took it upon themselves to say, hey, let's not commit any crimes. Let's not do anything crazy because they'll try me as an adult and give me a harder sentence. But in this case, these 5 young boys did not do anything. But the prosecutor, the bitch Linda Fairstein, I'm sorry, excuse my French, but that bitch Linda Fairstein, Charlemagne the God put it really eloquently and really truthfully. He said, you are so anti-black. You were so anti-black that you forgot to be pro-woman. And that is so true. This is one of the reasons you have black women and other women like myself backing out of feminism, because it really does not benefit us. And it really doesn't go to show that you're true pro-woman. It's like you're pro yourself, pro your thought process, pro what you've been taught over the years about a certain group of people. And I guarantee she doesn't get around much. She doesn't associate herself around different people. Something tells me she's probably from down south or from somewhere where she probably has, rich parents. This is what happens when you just listen to media and don't get out there. And this is why I think it's best to embrace diversity, not for the sake of let's put each other in a room and it's all going to be kumbaya, but, get out there and listen to people. I feel like people like Linda Fairstein, white people, white women, they tend to not listen so much. People like her. I'm talking about people like her, okay? So if it doesn't apply, I let it fly. People like Linda Fairstein don't want to listen to reasoning, especially when it goes against their own. And that's why I don't really like conservative people. I'm sorry. I can't accept some of it as an opinion because it always comes out of ignorance. And then you have cases like this. You have biases. You have ignorance inside of you that you do not want to admit you have. You do not want to change. And this is why you have black folks, especially some of the people I see on the internet, who have the idea, who have the notion, and have made themselves believe based on their experiences and what is happening and what has happened in the past that all white folks are racist. I'm sorry. And this is not me saying it. This is me saying what other people are saying. And I understand why they do that. Because when you have people like Linda Fairstein, who's made money off of this, she was trying to make this case stick so much. Even when the DNA came out saying that this was inconclusive. And I read in a comment section that someone said the guy who did the DNA testing purposely put inconclusive because he knew it wasn't a match. But inconclusive tends to mean that, there was no direct answer, whether they were or they weren't. But for the most part, the DNA did not match. And again, these boys lied under coercion. They were coerced to lie because they just wanted to go home. Their confession tapes, and you can see one of them, I think it was Corey, he said Antoine. It was Corey or it was Raymond. They said Antoine, but the guy's name was Antron. Remember the mix-up of the names? They don't know each other. None of them knew each other. But Linda Fairstein wanted to make it stick because guess what? She wants to get ahead. Think about like lawyers and prosecutors and people who do criminal justice cases. When you do high profile cases and you win them, or when you take on high profile cases and you win, it looks good for you. You can get up there in your career. You can make partner. I remember watching The Chi and that lawyer that got Ronnie off. If any of you out there watch The Chi, I love The Chi. Oh my gosh. I love so many TV shows. It's crazy. But in The Chi, the black female lawyer who was trying to get Ronnie off and who got Ronnie off and out of jail, she said, Ronnie told her, oh, it's great to have someone that's on my side. And she said, I'm not on your side. Do you think I enjoy getting murderers and white supremacists off? I'm trying to make partner. And this is one of the reasons I don't see myself being a criminal defense lawyer doing criminal justice, although it is necessary for more people like me to be in there. I think it's too much. And this is not me saying this out of necessarily fear or doubt. This is me saying this out of, of course we need more of us in there, but more of us aren't getting paid enough. And then when we want to get paid enough, we have to take, the dirty route. And this is why some people just don't trust lawyers. This is why there's this whole running gag about lawyers are going to go to hell. But in the cases of Linda Fairstein, you wanted to make a case stick so bad because you in your heart of hearts wanted to criminalize males of color, black men, men of color. You wanted to criminalize them so much because that's how you saw him. And even when the truth came out in part 4, you said, oh, the guy Mateus Reyes, who came out and admitted to Corey and admitted to everyone and took the DNA, and his DNA matched the sock of the victim. You believed that these were these 5 boys who did it. You believed that it was these 5 boys who did it so much that even when the evidence came out, you didn't want to admit that you were wrong because, backtracking now makes you look bad. And that's one of the things I don't like necessarily about conservatives is that they always talk so much. They always talk so much stuff, so much ish. But when you are hitting them with facts, they don't want to admit it because they don't like admitting that they're wrong. And I'm not saying liberals are better. I'm definitely not saying that, okay? They've been caught doing some foul stuff too, okay? But let's just be honest. The thing about when you have an excessive conservative, extremist right-wing point of view about a certain group of people, that is dangerous. It costs 5 young boys their freedom. One served so much time for a crime he didn't commit. And when it came to his parole hearing, this is what I respect about Corey, but felt sorry about it. When Corey's parole hearing came like 2-3 times, they asked him, do you admit to the crimes? And the thing is, he has nothing to admit because, you're locked up for doing a crime you didn't commit. But if you admit that, hey, I did the crime and I promise to be a better person, he can go home and get out in less time. But he knows he didn't do the crime. And I remember in the movie, he said, I'm not going to my parole hearing. If they don't want to hear my truth, I'm not going. Because my truth is I didn't do it. So I don't have a crime to admit to. I'm not going to admit to the crime. Even in that probation hearing class with Kevin and Yusuf, they stood up and they said, we're not guilty. They stood up and said, we're not guilty. We don't have to admit to a crime because we didn't commit a crime. There is nothing to admit to. And I am so proud of them for sticking to their truth. I really am. The only thing that hurt me was that it cost Corey more time. That is what really hurt me, because your truth cost you more time. But honestly, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but maybe there was somewhat of a blessing. Because remember, Mateus Reyes admitted to Corey in prison. And they were in prison twice. They were in Attica. And then when he moved, he's like, hey, Mateus Reyes, do you remember me? We were in Attica. We had that fight over the TV and stuff like that, over the volume. And then Mateus Reyes says, hey, I found God and stuff like that. And you have people like that, they repent their sins once they've been in jail forever. And Mateus Reyes was in jail for another crime he committed. He was in prison for, because there's a difference between jail and prison. He was in prison for raping and murdering a pregnant lady. I think it was his girlfriend. I am not sure. But he was locked up for, raping and murdering a pregnant woman. So he was a serial killer and a rapist. So this is nothing new for him. This is his track record. This is the person Linda Fairstein should have been looking for. But she wanted to make a case stick so bad because she needed a high-profile case. She wanted to be right. And in the words of Charlemagne the God, she was so anti-black, so anti-people of color that she forgot to be pro-woman. If you were pro-woman, you would be looking for the right person. The DNA came out and it matched Mateus Reyes perfectly. Conclusive evidence. And he came out and confessed. And that's why Corey was able to get out. And that's why the rest were able to get exonerated. And that is the problem I have with Linda Fairstein. Linda Fairstein is in there saying, oh no, they did it, but he just got to her first, he just got to her last, he was just the one that actually did the full-blown crime, but they were around, they did it. And this is why when you come up with facts conservatives don't want to hear, this is why I don't like to listen to necessarily too many conservatives if they don't talk about economics, because some of them will make good economics, they will make good economics points, but everything else is just bullshit. Excuse my French. 9 times out of 10, or at least the people you see in the media, because some of them who call themselves conservatives swear up and down that they're not bad people, okay? But I will say this, for those of you who may be conservative, Republican, and think that it's not a bad thing, I'll just tell you this, you have terrible people representing you. And I'm not saying that the liberal side is perfect. Again, I have criticized the liberal side a little bit more, not even a little bit more, but a lot more nowadays. So, but the difference between the conservatives and the liberals, that the liberals will come out with facts. Okay, it's not all propaganda. You have conservatives like Brandon Tatum and Candace Owens calling this propaganda. No, this is facts. This is history. This actually happened, and we're just putting this in a movie for the millennials to see. That's just what it is. Okay, and you do not want to come out and admit that, because Candace Owens, and I'm speaking to Candace Owens, because Donald Trump is unfortunately now the president, and he sent out an ad in the paper calling for the execution of the exonerated five. He called out for him. Now he's the president, and now he can't backtrack, and now you need to cape for him because you need to talk your product up. But that's a whole nother video for a whole nother day. But anyway, back to part 3. And so watching part 3, what I really got to see in Kevin was, again, Kevin, Ray, and Yusuf is, again, life after prison. What are we going to do? Where are we going to get a job? Yusuf is saying, hey, I want to go back to school, and I want to do this. And I'm glad that Yusuf went back to school, because if you go on his Instagram page, he's Dr. Yusuf Salam. So he definitely got his PhD in something, and he's a public speaker. So he's doing very well for himself. And I think that's another thing. You see people in the Nation of Islam, they're doing well. They have good careers. They're again, community minded, organized. Oh my gosh, I can definitely see Yusuf being a doctor, okay, or having a PhD in something. I can definitely see this with Yusuf. So with Raymond, he was trying to get a job, like, who's gonna hire me with a felon? And speaking of which, the felon thing, the whole, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Have you ever been, convicted of any crime? And if so, write down. And I feel like in this case, in cases like this, my heart hurts, because how would you feel where you're being asked if you're convicted of a felony? Yes, you were convicted, but you committed no crime. You are conflicted with signing that and saying, yes, I was convicted of a felony, but you didn't even commit the crime, but you were technically convicted. So there is this level of, there's this level of gray area, I guess you could say. There is this level of confusion and confliction, because I didn't do a crime, but I got convicted of a crime. So do I sign this or do I not? And if I put no, who knows if they do background checks on me and find out that I was convicted technically, but to tell them, no, I didn't commit that crime because I just lied under coercion. And that sucks. And another thing is that Ray ended up going back to jail. Raymond ended up going back to prison because he was selling drugs. And he got out in the 90s or the early 2000s. I am not sure, because I know he came out when, CDs were around. So it has to be the early 2000s maybe. But I don't think they gave exact dates in the movie, if my memory serves me correctly. But he basically started selling drugs, got caught, because he had to provide. And I hear this about the cycle. I hear this a lot. People get out of prison, and even if they get jobs, they're not paying enough. They can't cover rent. And mind you, this is New York City, okay? We're known for high real estate. We're known for expensive real estate, okay? I don't think gentrification is 100% a bad thing, but I don't think it's 100% a good thing either, because this high price and rent is too much. I eventually want to move out of my parents' house, and I just can't afford rent. You know what I'm saying? And again, I don't have a job right now. That's just me being honest. I hate saying that, but I don't. And it's hard to even get a job without a criminal record, okay? Even with a college degree, it's hard to get one without a criminal record. Imagine how hard it is with one. So my heart went a little bit out to Raymond, because yeah, I understand it's hard. And again, this is New York, high rent. If you thought rent was high back then, imagine how it is now, okay? Sometimes it kind of is like pulling teeth if you want to find a nice house for a good enough rent in a good neighborhood. You'll probably need like a ton of roommates. But some people who just want to live by themselves, like rent for a studio apartment here in New York City is expensive. And with the amount you get, or the kind you get, or the setup you get, it doesn't look worth it. And this is why, look, we talk about inflation, we talk about the raising minimum wage, we talk about gentrification as the reasons to high rent prices, which is why I think people need to hold more politicians accountable when it comes to stuff like property taxes. But I guarantee some people are in politicians' pockets, some politicians are in businessmen's pockets, businesswomen's pockets. So that also plays a part. Trust me, look, I love New York City. I think we are one of the most liberal and progressive states and cities in the country. But stuff like this is a real big setback for us. I'm not going to say we're innocent. I'm actually not. But you know, what I saw with Ray was it really represented his story of life after prison and going back, represented how hard it is to make it, get some money, feed your family. And I think he had a girlfriend at the time that he was moving into. And he sold drugs because he had to find a way to make some money. And, you know, I hear this constantly. Oh, I went to jail for drugs or for something else, but it was hard for me to get a job coming out of prison. But it was hard for me to get a job coming out of prison, so I had to do the quickest and easiest thing. And in a lot of cases, the fast money attitude we have in poor neighborhoods, we have to stop that. But that fast money was good because I hear stories. I read books on this stuff, fiction and nonfiction. I read books on this stuff about how people sold dope because it made quicker and faster and more money than, you know, doing a regular 9-to-5. And I'm sorry, this is why I believe in the whole raise the minimum wage thing, because we don't need drugs being sold or being done in our community. We always talk about the problems with crime in our community, but lack of jobs equals an increase in crime. So this is why I'm here for the whole increase the minimum wage thing. But yes, that is also what broke me, because I always heard those stories. Oh, it's hard to find work, so we go back to selling drugs. Or it's hard to find work, so we go to selling drugs. You know what I'm saying? And then he ended up back in prison. It's like, man, you had your freedom. Don't mess it up. And 100%, I can't really blame them all the time. 100%, I cannot blame the people who go back to a life of crime or who go to a life of crime to sustain themselves because they went to prison. If you went to prison for something you did wrong, and you go back to it, I'm sorry, I can't have too much sympathy for you. I cannot have too much sympathy for you. But in this case, when you went to prison for something you did not do and it has ruined your life, my heart goes out to you. And this is where you hold the city accountable. I saw all of part 4. We got to see how he kind of, you know, I guess lost his mind a little bit in solitary, because, you know, the first time he went to the first prison, he was told by one of the officers, hey, just let me know if you want to do something for me. And when he gave him that look, I was a little nervous. I was like, what are you talking about? Because I hear what goes on in prison. But turns out the officer wanted nothing more but some candy bars. And honestly, look, I prefer that than what I thought he was referring to, because, you know, that just means you had to do the bare minimum. Just get me some candy. Okay, fine. And he gave him some advice. He said, don't go to the infirmary if they mess with you. Just let me know if they mess with you. But if you have a problem with them again, or if you want a safer route, go to solitary. And when I heard solitary, my mind instantly went to Khalif Brawler, who, was spent 3 years in solitary, and he ended up committing suicide. So, and you saw how Corey in the movie was basically losing his mind. He was hallucinating a little bit. You know, he was very delusional. He was emotional, acting up. When he heard that his brother died, he said, fuck everyone, fuck the judge, fuck everyone who lied on me. Because I remember when his verdict was read, he had almost attacked the Elizabeth girl. He said, you lied on me, you lied on me. I remember that. And that is also what bugs me out, because, you know, he knew in himself. He knew what he was doing. You felt the emotion, but, you know, this is what happens when you don't know how to, like, word yourself. And I think Corey did, and I heard the real Corey White speak. I believe he had, like, somewhat of a speech impediment, so some people kind of feel like he's quote-unquote slow. But you can tell, like, he's not, you know, dim. He's not, you know, I guess slow or quote-unquote stupid or dumb. He knows his stuff, okay? He's a pretty wise kid, you know, hence Corey Wise, because they made that joke a couple of times in the movie. But you can tell he knows his stuff. I remember in the courtroom, he was being asked all these questions. He was saying, what does this have to do with my case? Why are you asking me all these questions? What does this have to do with my case? So he knows his stuff. He may not know how to act it out right, I guess, because mind you, he's young, okay? And he was still a kid in a maximum security prison. And come to find out, the second prison he went to, where he was getting beat up and you know, he had a fight. He was basically fighting 5 different guys in the laundry room. He was fighting 5 different guys in the third prison. He was fighting 2 guys in his first prison. So every single prison he went to, of course, maximum security, he was fighting people. He was fighting more people than he could fight. He said, whoa, hey, I don't want any trouble. He just wants to basically do his thing and live out his sentence so he can go. And the only person who truly had his back, or who had his back, was that cop in the second prison. That white cop in the second prison, he was really having his back. He said, hey, man, he saw him as a kid. He was calling him kid. And Corey was like, I like it when you call me kid. And he saw him in the second prison, and he said, yeah, the second prison was Attica. I remember it was Attica. He went in the second prison, which was further than Harlem. I think, was it upstate? Was it upstate? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was upstate. But it was further than, you know, than Harlem. But they just wanted to get him out of there. And that's the problem with transfers. They may take a while. But he was really, that cop was really good to... But that cop was really good to Corey. You know, he had never messed with him, had his back, you know, said, hey, I have a kid. And I couldn't imagine someone, you know, doing that. So I have to give props to that guard. I really do. Whoever he is, if he's still alive, I give you props, even though you may never see this. But yeah, I give you those props. And I remember seeing Corey's backstory with his brother, you know, talking about how, oh, you had that same look on your face when I caught you skipping school. You know, you used to give me that look when I caught you skipping school. And his brother caught him outside of a bar and said, hey, bro, why are you skipping school? You're supposed to be in school. And, you know, it also goes to show his brother was Norman, but, you know, his brother was also transgendered or identified as transgendered. And and it goes to show the culture of how people in our community and in America in general, but people, especially people of color in the Black community, treat the LGBTQ community, the level of homo and transphobia that exists within the Black community. So basically he finds out that his brother dies, and when you find out that he was transgender, I feel like this scene in the movie also alluded to the fact that Black trans women are being killed at record numbers. So I also think that was a little good thing they did, because, you know, based on this movie, it's a true story, and it kind of alluded not only to these people's stories, but to other events in history that people can relate to. Another part in the movie was the part where Corey has that flashback to him in the Kennedy Fried Chicken place with his girlfriend the day he decided to go to the park. And it basically was a what if moment. You know, what if I had done something differently? What if I had stayed with her? I probably would have been with her. I probably wouldn't have been in here. And there was an Instagram post that I saw early before I saw the movie. There was an Instagram post that I saw that said, you know what? If Corey had stayed with his girlfriend and listened to his girlfriend, he probably wouldn't have been in the situation that he was in. And I'm not saying that this post was blaming him, nor was I blaming him, but I was saying it made a quote about trust a woman's intuition. Sometimes that could save your life. And you know what? I really agreed with that post a little bit, because even Corey was like, man, I'm staying here, you know? Imagine what if he had stayed with his girlfriend, and then he flashed back to say, hey, let's go to Coney Island. Let's have a time of our lives. Let's live our life. He probably would have been with the love of his life. And you know, that was a truly bittersweet moment, because it was romantic, it was fun, and it was like, you know what? I could have lived my life. I could have been free. And I was only trying to be a good friend, and I spend the most time in here. And that hurt me. The Corey story is going to hurt everybody, man. It's heart-wrenching. And here's the thing. I'm not going to say necessarily that he could have avoided this fate, because he was caught the next day just walking with Yusuf And he just decided to go to the court to be a good friend, to the police station to be a good friend. So even if he did stay with his girlfriend, who's to say that he still wouldn't have been caught up in the situation, because he just went to be a good friend. So you never know how this will turn out. But, you know, it's a very riveting, dramatic, heartbreaking, informative, necessary movie, and I encourage everyone to watch it. I definitely felt like I left a few key points, but you know what? If you have any key points you want to mention, leave them down in the comments section. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And you know what? Feel free to tell me if you want to see another part. If you feel like I've left anything out, you know, just tell me, or direct me to any links or any other sources of information you may have on this case. I know there was a documentary about this case before Ava DuVernay's movie about this, so I hope to check that out soon. But thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much. Don't forget to check the links down below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell right after you subscribe. Thank you so much again. I love you all, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.